Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. If you are a physician currently living outside of Qatar and you're looking to take your practice there, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're totally demystifying the official Qatar Ministry of Public Health and DHP licensing process specifically for international first-time applicants. We are going straight to the source. We're using only the official policy documents to give you a really clear, actionable guide. Okay, let's dive right into this.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with a quick DHP overview, then we'll get into choosing your correct pathway. After that, we'll break down the GP tiers, look at specialists and consultants, walk through the actual application process step by step, and wrap it all up with some key takeaways.
All right, Section 1, DHP Overview. So, first things first, we need to understand the DHP. The Department of Healthcare Professions is the regulatory body operating directly under Qatar's Ministry of Public Health. Their number one priority? Patient safety. They are the gatekeepers. They evaluate your credentials and issue your license. And the official policy documents they publish, which, by the way, are the only things we are using for this explainer, are the absolute rulebook. What the DHP says, goes. So understanding their specific definitions is absolutely crucial step 1.
Moving right along to Section 2, Choosing Pathways.
You really need to ask yourself right now, which Qatar medical license is actually right for me? As an international physician, you have to critically evaluate your own postgraduate training and exactly how many years of clinical experience you have against the DHP criteria we're about to cover. Because let me tell you, applying for the wrong tier is a guaranteed way to hit a massive roadblock. Basically, we're looking at 4 main pathways. First, the General Practitioner, or GP. This is for independent doctors providing uncomplicated acute and chronic care. Then, there's GP Supervised, which, spoiler alert, is highly restricted for overseas applicants. We'll get into that in a second. Next, the Specialist Pathway, which requires an approved postgraduate degree for independent specialized care. And finally, the Consultant Pathway. Now, notice how the key differentiator for a consultant says it's a promotion? Yeah, we're going to unpack that little myth very soon.
Okay, Section 3, the GP tiers. Let's get into the details. The DHP draws a really hard line between a standard GP and a supervised GP. If you're applying from overseas for a standard GP license, you get full independent practice, but you absolutely must have 5 years of clinical experience. The GP Supervised tier, well, that's designed for applicants who lack experience or maybe have a gap in their practice. But, and this is a massive but, it essentially requires you to already hold a Qatari ID on family sponsorship. So if you're applying directly from overseas without that family sponsor QID, the GP Supervised route is practically closed to you.
So let's focus just on that fully independent general practitioner role. Here are your strict baseline requirements. You need a minimum 6-year undergraduate medical degree, plus the completion of a 1-year internship. And then comes that golden rule for overseas applicants we just mentioned. You literally have to prove 5 full years of clinical experience. After all that, you have to pass the DHP qualifying exam. But hold on a second. What if you really don't want to take another exam?
Well, I have some good news for you. The DHP policy lists several recognized GP exam exemptions. So if you already hold active, passing scores for exams like the USMLE Step 2, the UK's PLAB Part 1, the AMC MCQ from Australia, or the IFOM Clinical Science exam with a minimum score of 60, you are totally exempt from taking the DHP's own GP exam. Just keep in mind, the validity of these equivalent exams is usually specified right on the certificate, or they're just considered to be valid for 3 years by default. Having one of these is a huge time saver. Let's shift gears now to Section 4, Specialists and Consultants. For specialists, the DHP categorizes international postgraduate qualifications into 3 distinct buckets, Category 1, 2, and 3. Category 1 degrees are essentially the top tier. For these, you only need 1 year of postgrad experience, and there's no DHP exam required. Awesome, right? Category 2 requires 2 years of experience, and again, no exam, but Category 3, that one requires proof of 3 years of structured training, plus 3 years of clinical experience, and you actually have to pass the DHP licensing exam. You really need to check the DHP's approved specialty list to see exactly which category your home country's degree falls into.
And listen up, if you are a Category 3 specialist, you need to pay very close attention to this next point. The DHP strictly mandates that your 3 years of required clinical experience must come from a governmental, semi-governmental, or an official teaching hospital.
Experience from a standard private clinic simply will not count for Category 3 applicants applying from overseas. This right here is a very common reason for rejection, so you've got to ensure your paperwork reflects this exact requirement. Okay, now let's demystify a major point of confusion. A lot of highly experienced doctors want to apply directly to the DHP as a consultant. However, per the official guidelines, consultant is actually a promotional title. It's granted by your healthcare facility in Qatar once you're hired. You typically apply for your initial DHP evaluation from overseas as a specialist. Then, your future employer essentially upgrades you to consultant based on your years of experience post-specialty.
So how exactly does a facility promote you to that consultant level? It's a stepwise timeline, based on those exact same categories we just talked about. If you have a Category 1 degree, your employer can promote you to consultant after just 2 years of post-specialty clinical experience. For Category 2, it takes 4 years. And if you're Category 3, you're going to need 6 full years of post-specialty clinical experience to be eligible for that coveted consultant title.
All right, we know our pathways now. Let's move to Section 5, the application process.
The DHP has an official registration and evaluation process map. Think of it as your ultimate roadmap for navigating their online portal, which is known as Sharian. Essentially, it outlines a very strict sequence of events. You apply online, you pay your fees, the registration section reviews your request, and then you undergo what's called Primary Source Verification, or PSV, where a third party independently verifies that all your medical credentials are real and valid.
Let's break that whole process down into some really simple steps. First, you submit your application and all your documents online through Sharian. Second, you pay the required fees. Third is that mandatory primary source verification we just mentioned. Got to prove those degrees are genuine. Step 4, you might actually be called for an interview if the DHP committee requires further clarification on anything. And finally, if everything checks out, you receive a preliminary evaluation approval. But remember this preliminary approval is only valid for 6 months.
Now, what happens if you successfully pass the evaluation but you don't actually have a Qatari ID yet? Well, the DHP allows for a temporary license. This is issued after your successful evaluation and is valid for a maximum of 6 non-renewable months. During this window, you must secure a linkage with an employer to get your permanent license. Crucially, to even get this temporary license from overseas, you must submit a medical report, which includes tests for HIV, hepatitis B and C, and a chest X-ray, and a police clearance certificate from your home country. Both of these documents must be officially attested by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or MOFA, in Qatar.
Let's bring it all together now in Section 6, Key Takeaways. Based on our deep dive into these official rules, here is a highly recommended chronological game plan for a first-time applicant. Spend month 1 determining your exact tier and category. Month 2 should be spent strictly verifying that your specific years of experience meet those overseas requirements. Seriously, don't guess, calculate it exactly. In month 3, gather and organize all your documents for the PSV process. And finally, by month 4, you'll be ready to confidently submit that online evaluation application and start talking to potential employers in Qatar.
And I really cannot stress this next point enough. Your preliminary evaluation is only valid for 6 months. This is a super critical policy detail that catches so many confident applicants completely off guard. Honestly, do not apply for your evaluation until you are reasonably sure you can secure an employer linkage within that half-year window. Otherwise, your evaluation is just going to expire and you'll be back at square one.
Just to wrap things up, let's summarize the most common traps based on the strict language in those DHP documents. You want to avoid these at all costs. First, do not apply as an overseas GP if you have less than a full 5 years of clinical experience. Second, do not assume you can just slide into a GP supervised role from overseas without a family sponsor QID. Third, if you're a Category 3 specialist, do not submit experience from private non-teaching clinics. It just won't count. And finally, never, ever let that 6-month preliminary evaluation window expire.
So we've covered the rules, the tiers, the categories, and the exact steps you need to take straight from the official DHP playbooks. Looking at your own credentials and experience, which DHP medical pathway are you ready to conquer? Get your documents organized, plan out your timeline, and best of luck on your licensing journey in Qatar.